So why is that so swampy out there?
Well, it's a natural swamp from Crow Creek.
Oh, is it?
All the drains there, you know, Crow Creek pretty much dries up, you know,
Yeah.
that's all. So, and it comes, surfaces back in there.
Oh,
Yeah. That's what a lot of these areas do, they'll, the groundwater goes down and it resurfaces.
Are you guys ready?
I am.
All right, it is April 9th. This is the Broadwater County Commission meeting, working meeting for county office restructuring. Nicole, do you want to come on up? Morning.
Good morning, my dear.
Morning.
So I've brought some information to you today through this county office restructuring. Got me thinking that I would like you, the commission, to consider changing my department, the planning department, to the community development department. For a number of reasons. Planning, basically, the general public assumes that that's subdivision. And planning isn't just subdivision.
Right.
It's everything that has to do with land use, roads, any kind of community development, essentially, folks come to me. And so I put together what I would consider to be a community development job description, also very similar to what my current duties are. So I wanted to give you this and have you look over it and at least consider it.
Mainly you're changing the title.
Right, the title of the office, because when folks come in and they say, well, you know, I'm not really sure this isn't subdivision. Well, I don't just do subdivision, I do, like I said, anything that has to do with land use or development. You know, I spend numerous hours with folks trying to determine what they can and can't do with their property. I've had folks in my office looking for pieces of property to purchase, but what they can specifically do with those pieces of property. For instance, commercial developments come in and they say, where can I do commercial development? Where are some areas that would allow for what I'm looking to do? So, you know, I really would just like to consider changing this to be community development. We are not the only county that's doing this. The first one that had gone through this process was Madison County. They were a planning department and they decided to do away with that completely. They're now community development and grants, I believe, and they have a staff of 4. I don't necessarily want to take on grants right now because I'm still a staff of 1, but these are some of my thoughts, I guess, that I've been thinking about. You know, how to make this be a little bit more understanding to the public, to the taxpayers, to everyone, as to what my department really does. You know, and then the duties that I can perform for the citizens, for the commission, for other departments. So those are all outlined in here as well. Parks and Recreation is new. Well, you know, it's only a year old, it's still a baby. But that's in here as well. Parks and Recreation and planning, they do go hand in hand in the sense that they are community development. There are a couple of other duties that I believe Debbie Kelly would like to pass on to me, which I'm fully, you know, intend to take that on, whatever she needs me to do. But that's going to fall under this description, not planning.
What's the GIS stand for?
Geographic Information Systems.
Okay.
So basically all of the mapping.
Okay.
Which is another thing, you know, when this department started, it was rural addressing. Basically, folks just came to us if they needed an address. Now I have all of the fire departments, the sheriff's office. Mike Conkey was just in and, you know, purchased a bunch of maps and ordered some more atlases. All of these documents that I need to create, which are great, but for geographic information systems, and you know, folks that come in and say, hey, I need a map of this area, or what can you tell me about this? So it really is more than just rural addressing. You know, so the whole mapping program, planning, parks and recreation, all of those things, instead of having this rural addressing, GIS, planning, parks and recreation department, it doesn't fit very well on a business card or a letterhead. So,
You know, I just have to say, hats off to you, my dear. What you've come to us with is exactly what we're after. You tell us what best describes your job and your duties and responsibilities. And
good. Thank you.
very good job.
So also in there, you know, you can see I've left the salary line blank. I I would hope that that could be something we could discuss as well, would be that the salary would be commensurate with the job description. I have a letter in here from the planning board where they're, basically, you know, they've broken this down as to what we had paid a contract planner at a rate of $110 an hour. I'm asking for 20. Right now, I'm at 15 and some change, I think it's 15, 17, I don't know the exact change now. But that would be for the planning position, so this would, you know, I would like to have some discussions about that. The other document I've included in here are adjoining counties and similar counties in Montana. The lowest paid planner is $17.86, I'm sorry. And they also have a secretary. So again, I certainly don't mind taking on all of these duties and being, you know, the secretary and the planner, or, you know, the top and bottom, if you will, of the department, but I would just like to have some consideration given to my salary as well, or the salary for this department. And then the last two documents, I put together a goal sheet for fiscal year 2012 and 2013. And I've accomplished every one of those major goals, and so I've given you those accomplishments and goals, except for my AICP certification. I know I came to the commission, I don't know if it was last year, a year and a half ago, to discuss whether or not that would be something that the county could fund, if I could take my exam during working hours, or how that would work essentially. And I know that, you know, we had a brief discussion on that. AICP is American Institute of Certified Planners, so I would be an actual certified planner. But that was a goal that I had last year that I did not accomplish, but every one of those goals I have, the major goals. And I'm not gonna lie, the biggest one is the fire regulations. For me, in my mind, the fire regulations seemed like one of my most proud accomplishments
And it
ever
should
working
be,
for the county, so.
because it's been ongoing
It's-
for
yeah.
a long time.
I've been here, March 8th was my 10-year anniversary, and when I came here, March 8th, 2004, they were working on them. And so, to have that be my,
Good job.
I don't know that I wanted that to be my 10-year goal, but.
That was well done,
Okay.
though.
Yeah, it was.
Tremendously well done, and it wouldn't have happened without you. I said that before, I'll say it again.
Well, thank you. You know, and it was definitely a team effort. You know, there was a team of us, but that's definitely one of my proudest
And
accomplishments.
there are a few bumps in the road, we all know. But you got them over the hump, so to speak,
And nobody's had an issue with them yet, and we've had several subdivisions come through, beginning to end, using those regulations, and so.
good job, very
Hopefully
good job.
they're gonna stand for a while. So I know this is a lot of information to put before you today. I'm not necessarily looking for a decision today. I would like it to be out there for consideration.
What's happening with JLUS?
Joint land use study. That is the Fort Harrison Limestone Hills training site in the adjacent landowners.
Nice.
Oh, I'm
What's
sorry.
going on?
I'm sorry.
What's happening?
You know, I went to a meeting last Thursday. We are working on phase 4 essentially, where we took all of the information from those public meetings. We had a public meeting here, an evening meeting, where they went through, and you know, these folks, Matrix, you know, the company that's spearheading this project, you know, they've got this figured out. They had a list of concerns all around the room, and so folks just went around and, you know, put a little mark on if it was an actual concern to them. They tallied all of that. We came back last Thursday and said, okay, these are some concerns. How do we feel that we could mitigate these? What is our strategy going to be? Is it a long-term goal or short-term goal? So we had a really long meeting on Thursday where a team of about, you know, 5 of us just sat around and went through it and said, okay, we feel that this is something that we can tackle, as in noise or dust abatement. Is this something that we can do? So, you know, we're actually getting into the meat of it, if you will, before they can send out their final plan. So we're gonna have a few more public meetings as it moves forward, because I think that's a huge, huge part of the process. You know, this is a community plan, you know, for the National Guard, for Broadwater County citizens, Lewis and Clark County citizens. We really, really need to make sure we have all of their input. So, you know, I would say we're about halfway through, is what it seems to me. You know, but we're dead smack in the middle of it. I mean, we're right where we need to be as far as getting involved. So, you know, it's been a great project too to be involved in, and I'm glad I got to be a part of it. So, I never would have ridden a helicopter had I not, don't know that I ever will again.
I was just saying, how was that?
It was okay, it was an experience, yeah. It was definitely an experience. You know, they did their, they call it nap of the earth, you know, where they fly, it feels like about 2 feet above the ground and very fast, but you know, that was an experience.
So you
I
didn't go with
appreciate
them when they shot Deep Creek yesterday?
No, I did not, I'm not, it's okay.
I'm with you.
Yeah, so, you know, and it's a great team, you know, there's 2 teams, technical and policy, and, you know, everyone seems to work well together, and you know, we've done a great job of, I think, everybody moving forward and communicating. That's the biggest thing, so.
You know, you really are where you belong with all this planning stuff.
Well, I hope so. I feel like I am. You know,
Oh,
when
yeah.
I was hired as a part-time, as in 20 hours a week, planning board secretary and environmental health secretary, so sanitarian secretary and planner secretary. You know, and just over time, you know, it's just been here, you know, can you do this, can you do this, which is great, and I've appreciated that, I think, because that's allowed me to learn so much, trial by fire. I really think that sometimes that's the best way, when you have to do it, when there's nobody else there, not that there's nobody, but, you know, when you're the only one in your office, you need to figure it out, and I think that that's honestly one of the best ways to learn, so it's been great.
And with that is every single time you've been asked to take on a new responsibility, your answer without hesitation has been sure, yes. And that we appreciate.
And no
very much.
complaint.
Never. Yeah.
Thank you. So if you don't have any other questions of me, I guess I'm just gonna leave this with you for your consideration, and,
We will
Know
put it
where I
on the
am.
agenda
okay,
and have some more discussion and,
certainly.
yeah. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Have a good day.
Thanks, I will, you too.
Do you guys want to, this is a lot of information to be given, you know, just kind of spur of the moment. Do you guys want to, revisit this, just on the agenda? It'd be a week from Monday. Do you want to have another working meeting to discuss it? What do you guys want to do?
I would like to be able to read through it first.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think we have it just on the regular agenda.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll
I
put it
think
on the
so.
next one after, week from Monday.
Because I think there's a lot of fingers to this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And they're all good, but I just want to be able to understand them.
Mhm.
Yes.
And it isn't anything that has to be done.
No, no, no. Mm-mm.
no, and I guess to clarify my question, do you want it on a regular agenda item or at another working meeting to discuss?
I think a regular agenda item would be
Okay.
fine.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, all right.
She's done her homework.
Oh, yeah. And the planning board, this is not the first time they've asked for an increase in pay for the planner.
Uh-huh.
She's done the full market adjustment, which is required by the CBA. So it's like all, you know, it's just up to us to review it and come to a conclusion.
And I appreciate those boards that come forth and say that.
You too. They're the ones who work most closely with the
Exactly.
individuals. Yeah.
I mean, it's a no-brainer.
Mm-hmm.
for them to come to us and say, I think.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Doug was going to come, and I don't know if he's gonna come a bit later, or if he wasn't quite ready. Did talk to him, 2 weeks ago? And did mention that we'd be meeting. He also met with 2 different companies to bring us IT services. And I think he's still waiting on meeting with the 3rd next week, so he may be waiting to come to us with one package.
Can we call him and see if he's available?
Yeah, I don't have a phone, it's not in here. I'd be happy to just run down though.
Okay.
I'll be right back.
I didn't realize drainage districts were set up as a district, just almost identical to water districts.
Yep. Did you end up going to that meeting with, down at the federal building the other day on this drainage?
No,
Well,
when they formed their committee,
yeah.
no, I didn't go to that.
Didn't either.
And cause I asked Mike when he was here, and he says, oh, they're just getting everything set up, and that's what he said at the conservation meeting last night, that everything's set. And I forget when they're gonna have their next meeting, I think it's too far off. And the conservation district was happy with the way getting things lined up there. I like Spoon, but he's kinda mixed up on different things, and he thinks this is gonna straighten things out, and it's gonna just be a better setup, especially on that duplication and stuff like that.
All right, I don't think Doug is quite ready. First call is the 3rd. He's gotten the 3 quotes for IT services. First call was going to also include a quote on new computers for his office, because he's got the Windows XP. It's less expensive to replace the computers, which are all extremely old, rather than just a new program. So he's just still putting that together. If he gets an email today, then he'll come up and see us if we're not done. So on that, we'll probably be postponing a couple weeks and address it in the next working meeting.
Sounds fine.
All right. So the next one is HR. As far as the immediates that we really have to address. Jim Nyes was considered for contract. Of course, we had him here at a meeting. At that time, the cost was going to be about $14,000 a year, which is, no, Yeah, 14,000 a year, 14,400 a year, which is a screaming deal. He knows this county, he's been working with us pretty intimately for the last year and a half. He is not interested. Our needs are too big for contracting with him. So, what do you guys think?
Sounds to me like we're back at point one.
We are. The thing is we can't be without HR. That was brought to us by the insurance JPIA insurance a couple years ago, that we couldn't just have HR in name only. We had to have an acting department, a person with their own locked office, a person responsible for personnel files, and we did that. But we, our needs are bigger than we can provide with just a part-time employee or an employee addressing it part-time. So,
What are your thoughts?
my thoughts are, we have a serious need in this county that needs to be addressed. And before I say anything more, I would like to say, Elaine, you are one of my heroes. For the fact that you have put your health second to the needs of this county, that you are continuing to work as hard as you are for the good of the county.
Thank you.
For that, I want to just say thank you very much. And nothing I'm going to say applies to you, but we have too many elected officials in this county who are frankly not doing their jobs. And that lack of leadership, that extremely poor leadership, is trickling down to some of our departments and some of our employees. We've got too many department heads and elected officials complaining that their staff are not pulling their weight. And that is part of the disease of poor leadership. And it may not be their leadership, but when you have one elected official who refuses to do their job, or two or three that refuse to do their job, refuse to show up, are not engaged, do not know what's going on, don't understand the basics of management, which is personnel and budget, how can we then go to the employees and say, hey, step it up, you need to do more, you need to work
Starts at
harder?
the top.
It does. For that, I think we need some kind of in-house HR that can help motivate some of our employees, and that's not to say all of them, it's just some, but also somehow help to put the fuel to the fire of some of our elected officials who, when are elected by the people of this county, and their salaries and health insurance are paid by the people of this county, should be putting in at least 50% more than they're paid for. So those are my thoughts.
I would have to agree. We're in and out of here enough that we're able to oversee. It's gonna take somebody with a real strong personality, though, that can bite the bullet and push buttons.
Mhm.
I think Doug did that with his staff a week ago, or maybe it's been 2 weeks ago now, that he called them all in and said, okay, guys, this is what's gonna go on. And so for that, hats off Doug, he did a good job. But there's still some others that need to do the same thing.
Mhm. Yeah.
So are you saying advertise in-house?
Nope, I do not think we have, absolutely not. I think we need somebody from outside to come in. The beauty of contracting and the attractiveness of being able to spend that original $14,000, had that worked out, I think that would have been potentially a nice fit, as long as all the department heads and elected officials were doing their 125%. If they're not, then having an HR that is contract only does not address the problems when they're little. They only are contacted to address the problems when they've blown up. That is inefficient, much more costly, and we'd be exceeding that 14,000 because we'd be paying for many more hours of work because we're dealing with an explosion rather than a small little fire. At this point, for what we need and the fact that we don't have the leadership, I think somebody from outside needs to come in who's got the credentials, who brings with them respect, who is completely unbiased.
And no preconceived notions.
Absolutely not, yeah. Yeah, that's, I just don't see any other options. I think the taxpayers deserve better than they're getting.
I don't see why they, like you're saying, little items, they can be addressed just as easy before they get big.
Yes.
Right.
There's no reason for that.
And you're proposing what? I'm not sure where your thought is at, Franklin.
Well, you said, on the contractor that the little items wouldn't be taken care of until there's an explosion. There's no reason for that. As soon as they know that there is a small item, small problem, they get on it then. There's no reason they have to wait for the explosion.
Go ahead.
I don't think she means it that way. I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think she's saying that stay on top of that stuff before it becomes big. Maybe I misunderstood.
No, you're 100% right.
Well, that'd be as
When
soon as
we-
it's noticed,
Yeah.
that's time to be on it.
And that's where our leadership vacuum comes in. When you have a good department head or a good elected official, and they are managing their personnel as they should on an ongoing basis, they catch those little things, they address them immediately, they're gone, they're taken care of. When you have the vacuum in leadership that we do right now, you do not have that managerial experience where that person is able to address those problems until they've blown up into an explosion. We need either to bring in training for our department heads and elected officials that is attended and absorbed
And
100% and required. Of course, we have no authority over elected officials. They can choose to come or not. But without that training, that leadership vacuum continues. And then we have an issue where one department head is managing their personnel as they should. Another one, same county, whatever, just letting things go. Or they're not here. They don't see it. Those are some of the issues that are glaring, and that's what I mean by there needs to be a stronger partnership for a contract HR person, and we just don't have that right now with too many.
We really have no control over elected officials.
That's one of the problems. Yep.
But we can suggest. I mean, we can't require
Well,
them,
right.
but we can sure suggest and
Yeah.
offer
Yeah.
workshops or whatever.
Mhm. And make sure that their personnel know that these tools are there for them, so that maybe some pressure can be put from the bottom up as well. But, you know, that's one of the issues I see as one of our very big problems that needs to be addressed.
You know, the state offers daily, I don't know if that's the right word, periodically workshops that would address some of these things.
Yeah.
We could get a list of those upcoming programs.
I remember a long time ago there, I told Doug, I says, you gotta let them know that you're the boss in here.
Yep.
And I think fairly,
Finally did. Well, and I think that it's, as an outsider looking in, some of them don't want to rock the boat. They want to be one of the guys, quote unquote. And you can't do that and be the boss. You have to step up to the plate
That
and
might-
be in charge.
That might be why a contracted HR would be the best, but, I don't know.
And unfortunately.
And they don't have to listen to the HR anyway, any elected official.
Oh, not unless they want the taxpayers to pay some hefty bills. Yeah, HR is not an optional. They-
No, I mean, the officials don't have to necessarily listen to the HR suggests something, the elected official doesn't have to really,
No, but what you're
it'd
running
be
a
up to
risk.
that person to, be diplomatic with them, I guess you'd say, and get,
What you're running the risk of there, Franklin, I don't think you understand the importance of HR, the significance. HR is not optional. An elected official, it's a lot like the call Jack or the call Mike policy. We don't get to do anything when it comes to personnel without calling Mike and getting his blessing. If we do, then JPIA says, fine, Broadwater County, we're not covering you anymore. If a particular official continues to thwart HR or the call Mike policy, JPIA can then say, fine, Broadwater County, we're not covering that particular person anymore. What that means is any lawsuit, there's no coverage. Right now, we pay $10,000 if there is a personnel issue that goes to court or is litigated. That's a heck of a lot less money than $300,000 if we didn't have insurance coverage. That is a very serious thing to even have as an option, that an elected official doesn't have to follow HR.
Well, the bottom line is the people of Broadwater County deserve the best that we can offer for them.
Absolutely, yes.
And we personally aren't doing our job if we can't.
That's exactly right.
I mean, I don't want to run into John Doe in the grocery store and have him say, what's all this that's going on at the courthouse? Oh, I don't know. You know, you can't do that.
No,
We have to bite the bullet and say, what can
Yeah.
I do to help you?
mhm,
To those elected officials.
yeah. I think your idea of bringing in training is a good one. But it is entirely possible that as of the next 10 days, we will not have HR, period. That cannot be sustained. And that is only because the person who's been our part-time HR is potentially moving on. The contract idea was a good one, but that ship sailed. We didn't embrace it. It was a struggle just to get as far as we did. Again, that ship sailed without us because we were not able to embrace it at the time. So, from there, I'm open to suggestions.
Is Debbie applying elsewhere? Or can you answer that?
That I don't know. We agreed, last Monday or the Monday before that, to run in-house the accounting manager / payroll position. With her accounting degree and the fact that she's been working payroll and the fact that she herself will admit she's not a good fit for HR, I fully expect she will apply for that position.
She will.
If she does, and there's nobody else more qualified, there certainly could be, at this point we don't know, who's going to apply, then we have lost our HR, because she cannot be, she simply won't have enough time as a full-time employee to now also take on HR. It's too big a job to give an already full-time employee. So those are kind of some of the things we're looking at.
Have you heard from in-house at all, that somebody that might be interested?
I
is
haven't,
qualified?
it hasn't been posted yet. Debbie, as HR, is currently putting together the job description. As soon as that's done, it will be advertised in-house for 5 days. I've instructed her to instruct that all the interested applicants submit those to the commission. I don't think it's appropriate that it should go to her. since she
Right.
will more than likely put in for the position, or to Tammy, who is her subordinate. It should be completely out of that office, and so I did ask that they come to us.
And that makes sense.
Yeah, and we'll just put them in one place and go through them together, when we receive those. And that'll be a closed door, and the reason
Oh,
for
yeah.
that is, that kind of activity is protected by the Constitution, rights to privacy, and the rights of those individuals will far outweigh the rights of the public to know.
So we should know something within a couple of weeks.
She's almost done. I expect her to have it this week, posted, next week. We
And
should
where
have
will it be
those
posted?
in-house, so probably bulletin boards in the sheriff's department, bulletin boards here, and probably a memo to all employees.
Hmm.
So until we get all that information, we're
Yeah, it's kind of
at a
a,
standstill.
yeah.
Are we though? I mean, do we wait until afterwards to even address it, or do we start with some contingency discussions at this time?
No, I think we start.
Yeah, I don't think we can just wait.
I mean, that just puts us behind 2 more weeks.
Exactly, yeah.
No. Does it mean that's the route we have to go? No, but it means that we get busy and we check in
Mhm,
and start weighing all the facts.
mhm.
But can we advertise, how can we advertise in-house if we don't have the policy makeup?
We should have that here this week.
Well, that's, I mean, after that, then,
Yeah. So do you both think that HR is just one person and that's the only job they do?
Potentially, yes, depending on the job description. What I would like to see is almost an HR/team leader type job description, and those are not the right terms, but team leader, motivator, coordinator, that type of position. Eric Bryson is the model that I would look to when we adding HR to his job description. Of course,
So more, perhaps, I'm sorry,
no, go right ahead.
perhaps an administrative officer?
That could definitely be a fit. That could actually be a good fit for us.
Well, because that's what Eric's, I believe, his title is in Helena,
Yes,
at Lewis and Clark.
yeah. He has, of course, a HR staff, an HR office, but they're a much bigger county than we are. I would
Yeah.
think that the work he does, married with HR for Broadwater County, could be a nice fit.
Is it appropriate for public comment at this point?
We took public comment at the last working meeting. Is that okay with the board?
I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
May I come forward to the table?
Absolutely. I know you have the expertise in these kinds of discussions, Roger, that might be able to help us see some different options and ideas.
Thank you.
What you will find here, well, let me first start at the beginning. As you all three know, I'm a candidate for county commissioner. And when I spoke at the at the Lincoln Reagan dinner about my experience and expertise as a candidate for the office, the most qualified candidate. I brought up three things. One is, I worked for Congressman Rick Hill for 2 years. My position with him was pretty much liaison to cities and counties. I spent 2 years visiting county commissioners and sitting in on county commissioner meetings. Spent 2 years sitting in on city council meetings. Spent 2 years talking to school superintendents and got a real feel for the problems that the counties have. And one of the major things I discovered was the unfunded mandates and the mandates from the federal government were just burying the counties and the school districts financially and the cities. And so we went to war about that, and there was some success on the national level concerning that. Next thing I spoke about was my experience as a lobbyist, 5 sessions in the legislature. I really got to know county issues there too. I hung out a huge amount in the Appropriations Committee because I realized that's where bills were stopped or went through, because almost every single bill had funding with it. And it was the Appropriations Committee. Other committees could pass bills out or kill them, but it was the Appropriations Committee that was the one who really ran the whole legislature. I realized that money is tied to everything, especially in government. And I did get to know a lot of the other issues with cities and counties. I came to a full understanding of budgeting there, county finances, situations like that. Third area that I spoke about that would qualify me for county commissioner is the fact of large program management. I was the program manager under contract for Blue Cross Blue Shield for Medicare fraud. It had a $1.8 million budget. I didn't have any control over that budget. It frustrated the heck out of me because I saw how money was spent and misspent, and it was ridiculous. My language could get much stronger than that about that whole situation. I also got a huge bunch of personnel experience in that I had a cost center in this huge budget. And I was heading up all the investigations in Montana, Utah, and Colorado concerning health care fraud, Medicare fraud. And oftentimes it spilled over into Medicaid, oftentimes it spilled over into private insurance sector. Because any physician that was defrauding the system, or any organization such as a hospital or a clinic, they were defrauding on all three fronts: healthcare insurance, Medicaid, Medicare, and even some of the city-county programs. One of the problems I had was, at that time, our relationship with Russia was fairly good. The FBI had a huge number of agents that they had been working strictly on international issues with other governments, chasing ambassadors around the country, making sure that, watching them, stuff like that. Problem I experienced was that the FBI agents did not like doing healthcare fraud investigations. And I had to motivate them. And you're talking about motivating people here. I realized that the only way I could motivate those FBI, well, there were several ways I could motivate those FBI agents. But what I did was I started going out with them on investigations. I started calling the FBI agents, say that nobody had looked into Dr. Jones's practice, and we presented them this possible case, and I'd call and say, well, it's been 6 months, why has not anybody checked on Dr. Jones? We've got another $300,000 worth of claims here that are questionable. Well, we just don't have time. I said, well, you've got my cost center available. Why don't I go with you, and I will go with you to Dr. Jones's office? And I began to get motivation by my actually doing the work with them. That's one thing I got motivation. And the other way I got motivation is I held them accountable. I said, okay, you are supposed to be doing this job. This is your job description. Your cost, you're charging your work off to my cost center, and you're an FBI agent. Are you sure that you're really doing this work on my cost center? Do I need to audit this and look into this? Do I need to take a look at your personnel records? You got results immediately. So based on those 3 things, I started sitting in on your council meetings 3 months ago. I'm a very experienced auditor. In 1978, well before your time, Laura. In 1978, I don't know if Frank, if you remember this, or Elaine, you remember this, but there were huge problems with work comp. It was a feeding trough for the trial attorneys, pure and simple. Legislative auditors came in and said, you've got huge problems here. The legislative auditors looked at the finances, and one of their recommendations was a process audit. Now, at that time, I was an auditor investigator with them, and I guess they saw skills in me that thought I would fit well. They put me to work as an term just went on my head, internal auditor. I spent 2 years auditing the work comp process. I started in the mailroom, and I went all the way through legal, all the way to director, and identified all of the process problems that were there. It was great experience for me. I did work with the legislative auditors on it, so I got good training too, since it was their suggestion that there be a process audit. And since at that time I was only an auditor investigator, but yet I was assigned to do that, I knew if I went to the legislative auditors and called on their experience, they could help me with the process audit. And it was in the interest of both them and myself to get a good process audit done. So from the moment I've been sitting in here, listening to these meetings, I've been doing a process audit. And in that process audit, I have some findings. And the findings are that the 3 of you have unique experience and capabilities for the position you hold, but you just don't have the management experience that is needed in this county. I do. And so I'm coming to you today with a proposal that you make me Chief Administrative Officer for this county. Now, this is a PD that I've written up. What I did is, with my expertise in management, is I went to Lewis and Clark County, got their PD for Chief Administrative Officer. Their county is much larger, has different problems, but yet similar problems. And so I started modifying this to fit this county. And some of the things I've done here is, first off, you notice the status of the position here. Regular, full-time, exempt. I've highlighted exempt here. It's my proposal that you establish this position and establishment it as an exempt position,
to serve at the pleasure of the commissioners.
And that's exactly what I've done. If you look, I've updated this 2 or 3 times. If you look on the second sheet, on page here, page 2, the very bottom of it, I've done 2 things to protect the county. One is hiring preference will be given to applicants residing in Broadwater County. The reason I did that is because I feel your county manager needs to live in the county. You don't need somebody from Lewis and Clark County or Marr County or Gallatin County who has credentials, but who will come in here and apply for the position and then drive home each night to another county and not live under what they're doing. Not have some skin in the game. First thing is you need some skin in the game. The second thing is I would like to set up a team approach to this. And I've got this is an exempt position. The chief administrative officer will serve at the pleasure of the board, of the Broadwater Board of County Commissioners. That makes me directly accountable to you 3. You can fire me at any time if you should choose to hire me. But see, that makes me accountable, directly accountable, that at any minute, if you're not satisfied with my work, you can replace me or terminate the position and not have the position. My reasoning for doing that is exactly what I'm going to do with the county employees. I was very interested in listening to the discussion this morning. Motivating county employees, those people that are not doing their work. The first thing we need to do is, and Nicole did just an excellent job. First thing we need to do is do an audit of the county, a human resource type audit. We need to evaluate each position, rewrite the PDs, position descriptions, because these are evolving. This one has evolved from Lewis and Clark County. It's evolved in a way that it fits Broadwater County as best as I could determine. Once we establish those PDs, and in doing that, we also make all of the employees accountable, because they will be writing or having input into every one of the PDs. They will know exactly what their duties are, exactly what's expected from them. And once we get this figured out, we can also take a look at the pay levels, whether they're comparable to other counties of this size. We're not gonna compare ourselves to Lewis and Clark, we're not gonna compare ourselves to Missoula, okay? That's my proposal. Other things I bring to the job is the fact that if you look under examples of duties, the first 4 are pretty much boilerplate. They came right out of the PD for Lewis and Clark County. I put in 5 and 6. 5 is advises and directs the Board of County Commissioners concerning the findings of audits and investigations performed internally or done by other governmental agencies. The Chief Administrative Officer in Lewis and Clark County, that's too big a county for him to do that. This is a smaller county. I've got the expertise to do that, just simply by the fact that my audit expertise. I've also, there are some things going on as far as an FBI investigation right now in the county. There could be some more things coming down as far as investigations. I headed up, well, let me start at the beginning with this. When I was working for Medicare, doing all of the fraud, directing all the fraud activities, anti-fraud activities. My investigators in Utah came across some cases where physicians were doing experimental surgery on people's backs. They were placing pedicle screws in their backs. Now, pedicle screw, your pedicles in your vertebrae are, if you take a look at the vertebrae, they're the outermost point. And they were putting screws in those and then running rods up and down the backs through the screws. Well, first off, in old people, senior citizens, excuse me, I'm one also. In senior citizens, we all know of osteoporosis. And as age goes on, the calcium on our bones is depleted, the bones become more fragile. I went out and checked in the liability area, and there were massive numbers of suits out there concerning pedicle screws, busting off. I mean, imagine this, have a pedicle screw bust off on your vertebrae and have it floating around while the rods held the other pedicle screws in place. And it kind of began as a succession. One would let loose, and then another one would let loose, and then another one would let loose. And the only option was to go in and take them out and put a person in a wheelchair. But anyway, I then instructed, well, because the investigators in Utah had already started snooping around on billing practices on this, they found that there was massive billing on pedicle screws for senior citizens in Utah. And they also found out that under the regs for Medicare, this was, because it was such a dangerous procedure, this was considered an experimental procedure. So where we went from there was, we put together cases, we took it to a national meeting with FBI agents, agents from the Office of Inspector General, and U.S. attorneys. And we formed a national healthcare top fraud task force, which I headed up. It became a major investigation. I've worked with FBI agents, OIG agents, U.S. attorneys. Unfortunately, politics got mixed up in this, and when we got to $600 million in cases and recovery across the United States, the AMA stepped in through their lobbyists in Washington, D.C., and their lobbyists went directly to the Office of Health and Human Services, Donna Shalala. And 2 weeks later, the whole investigation was shut down. Politics. The citizens of the United States at that point were out $600 million in recovery, plus convictions. Gone. But back to what I'm saying here is, with the potential cases that are happening in Broadwater County, with what's going on right now with disaster and emergency services, if you should hire me as chief administrative officer, I can talk with those FBI agents. I can talk with the U.S. attorneys. I know the system inside and out. And I can also advise the three of you on what to do and what not to do, what to say and what not to say, so you don't prejudice the case, so you stay out of the case. So under point 5, I've got those strengths that I'm bringing in, 2. Under 6 here, represents Broadwater County, or assists Board of County Commissioners in matters concerning Montana Association of Counties, MACO, and Montana legislative hearings. With my 5 sessions of experience as a lobbyist for realtors and for Montana landlords, I'm perfectly capable of working with, it's Harold Blatty, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Perfectly capable of working with Harold at the state level as a lobbyist for this county, for the interests of this county. I wish I would have been at the last session, because there was a huge controversy over the funds that are coming out of Richland, Dawson, those counties in the eastern part of the state, Sidney, Glendive. The fuel of the gas exploration is just expanding like crazy. I wish I would have been there, because I was actually siding with the counties, with those counties in this. What was going on is they wanted to keep more of the revenue that they were getting. They've got a huge structural problem. They wanted to keep a greater percentage of the revenue they were getting rather than sharing it with the other counties of the state. I completely agreed with that. If we can develop mining and timber in this county, I would be up at the legislature arguing for that too. I think the counties, those counties that have the resources, but yet have the infrastructure problems because of those resources, they deserve to keep more money. If I got up in front of the legislative hearing, the first thing I would say is, okay, let's liken this to the goose that lays the golden egg. That's Richland County, that's Dawson County. What the governor did basically is start starving the goose that lays the golden egg. Is that really a good idea? So I can represent you at your direction. All of this is at your direction. I can be up there and be through my experience in lobbying and my experience through the Republican Party and my experience with a lot of the legislators that are still there, I think I could be very effective representing that county too, in this county also. So with me, I bring first the administrative skills to do all the administrative work that this county needs done. I bring with the auditing skills to identify the problems, especially in human resources, the problems this county has. Insurance skills, liability insurance wise, when somebody backs a truck into a stairwell. I bring my investigative skills as far as handling large cases, which you're on the verge of doing, and I bring my lobbying skills. I really feel that I would be a much better chief administrative officer than a county commissioner, because if I was a county commissioner, I would be doing the same thing Laura's doing. I would be doing all those things plus trying to be a county commissioner too, which is an overwhelming job. A county commissioner should not be the chief administrative officer. You're not, or whoever's chairing the board or whoever wants to take on those positions as a county commissioner. You weren't elected to be the chief administrative officer. You were elected to be a county commissioner. So my proposal to you today is, since your human resources thing needs to be solved, in 2 weeks, hire me. I'm ready to go. I've already been auditing this county for 3 months. I have some ideas already that I would like to present to you concerning some personnel problems you have. I have the network, the political network out there, where I can make some telephone calls and seek some solutions to some of your personnel problems. And we'd have to discuss those in closed door session. But in some ways, I've already been working the job. I've already been working the job by knowing to go to Lewis and Clark County, get a copy of their PD for Chief Administrative Officer. I've already been working the job well, and I've been a supervisor too. I've been supervisor, indirect supervision of all those FBI agents, OIG agents. That was very difficult. Direct supervisor, when I ran the Medicare recovery unit, what we did is we would look at all the Medicare payments that were being made, and we would see if there was secondary insurance, which should have been primary. And then we would seek recovery. I had 9 people under me there. And a lot of those people were long-term Blue Cross Blue Shield employees who were just kind of sitting there waiting for retirement, or were filling out job applications for other positions and just not doing their job. How I solved that was, I went in, I sat down with all 9 of those employees at their desks, partially learned their jobs, and then I also cross-trained another employee in their job. So every employee, and it probably can't be done in state government under the union, but every employee became well aware of exactly what their job was, how to do it, and that there was somebody else that was trained in their job. I primarily did that to say, well, what if you break a leg and are out sick for 3 weeks type situation? Or you're pregnant, you're gonna be taking maternity leave. We need to have somebody cross-trained. The secondary goal in that was to let that person know that if they weren't doing their job and I had to fire them, there was somebody who just right there, that could move into that position and take care of it. That's how you take care of personnel management situations. You make them accountable, you let them know exactly what is expected from them, and then, well, I was talking with one of your employees downstairs. I think she'd been here 2 years. She's never had the yearly evaluation. We need that yearly evaluation. From that yearly evaluation, if employees are not doing their jobs, then we put them on probation and do 6-month evaluations. If they don't pass the 6-month evaluation, we reevaluate them, and in a union situation, do another evaluation at 3 months. If they still are substandard, we've got the paperwork, the trail, and we're gonna say, sorry, but you're just not performing. You know exactly what you're supposed to do, you're not performing, I'm afraid we're gonna have to let you go. Another thing we're gonna do, if you should hire me as Chief Administrative Officer, is in the evaluation process, I will be the only one that knows about this. But say you've got a department with 3 employees. Those employees also, not an extensive evaluation, but evaluate the work of the other 2 employees. That really makes them count. And it also gives you the paperwork trail, that if we fire somebody and the union comes in, we can hand the paperwork to the union and say, look, this person was let go for valid reason. Even their counterparts in their department have said they're not doing a good job. IBM did that, and it just was incredible how they were able to solve their personnel problems. The other thing too is anybody that's under me, which would be most of the county employees, well, I need to define that. As I learn this, I'll know exactly who I have authority over and who I don't. They will also be able to evaluate me and my performance. So it's not a top-down situation, it's a top-down, bottom-up situation also. The information flows both ways. I cannot stand in judgment of an employee without being judged myself. If you hire me, I will be here at 7:30 every morning. I will not leave the building until 5:30. That way I'm here ahead of a lot of the employees and after a lot of employees. I will lead by example. Now you brought up the problem of trying to be liked. It's more important for me to be an effective manager than to be a part of the good old boy network or a good old gal network. You're not hiring me to be liked, but I will lead by example through hard work. And that way I can say, look, this is what is expected of my job. I'm here doing it. Why aren't you? Type situations. Any questions?
I have one.
Absolutely.
What are we looking at for salary?
That's what I was gonna ask too.
Okay.
You know the old saying about money talks.
Yeah. Now, I realize I haven't done my homework like I should have when Nicole was here. I haven't done an evaluation of salaries around me. As a house painter, I charge about my hours at $25 an hour. If I could work full-time at that, I'd make $52,000 a year. Now, what I would like for now is $52,000 a year, a lateral move. I'm here to serve. I'm not here to become a rich government employee. At $52,000 a year, you know that it's going to cost you an additional 33% over that for benefits. So that's where we're at. You just heard from Nicole, who's asking for $20 an hour. That's $40,000 a year. Now, you base all of this on 2,080 work hours a year, which is standard. So every $10 is 20,000 in pay. So, at the end of 6 months, we may have to take a look at this. But I think that that's a fair starting salary. I would suspect that the chief administrative officer, Lewis and Clark County, is anywhere from 80 to 120,000. I have been applying for jobs with state fund, workers' comp, because I was an auditor with them. They pay very well. Comparable job, an administrative position with them over this number of employees would be anywhere from 60 to 120,000. I don't know if other counties have chief administrative officers that are this size. One of the first things I'll do, I've got a lot of work ahead of me, but I plan on spending a lot of hours doing it. First thing I'll do is come up with a comparison. Another thing I'll do is I will actually drive to all of the counties that surround Broadwater counties, introduce myself, start networking with them. I will head into town to talk with Mako to see exactly what they have to offer. I can talk to Laura about that too. I understand she makes a lot of the Mako meetings. I'll explore the avenues of what Mako has to offer. You talked about training sessions. I have it listed in here on my references. Let's turn to my resume here. I have it listed in, as one of my references, but I worked with Mike Cooney, who is now the director of all of the employment offices, the state employment offices. I know Mike personally. One thing I thought I'd do is contact him and see what programs the state has to offer. My references, of course, are Rick Hill. I worked with him. Peggy Trink, who is the executive director of Montana Association of Realtors. She is probably one of the best political strategists I've ever known in my life. And I go to her for political advice from time to time. She's also a wonderful administrator, and I learned a lot from her. She trained me in being a lobbyist. I started out with them, and they are one of the big five up there. The unions, the power companies, the realtors pretty much make up the big fives. And carry enormous weight. If we need to bring Peggy Trink and Montana Association of Realtors into one of our issues, because, let's face it, what's good for the county is good for the realtors, because they like to see houses being bought and sold and built, pure and simple. I can call on her and see if I can get her help in issues too. Under personal references, Jim Rice, the Associate Justice of the Supreme Court. I've had a long-term friendship with him. I worked on his campaign when he was running for Attorney General. I was right because of my lobbying position, I had access to the governor's office under Judy Marks. Believe me, when Jim's name came up for appointment to the Supreme Court, I was in Judy's office, talking to Judy on a first-name basis about Jim. I lobbied extensively for Jim to get that position. Didn't have to lobby hard because, boy, there were a whole bunch of other people. There was a huge line of people behind me, but I really helped Jim on that. I won't say I did it, but I got very deeply involved in it. So there we are. I hope you can recognize, even from my presentation here, my managerial skills. I really think that this county needs me more as Chief Administrative Officer than as a Commissioner.
Any questions, any follow-up?
I have one comment, and you obviously come from both sides of the aisle
Yeah.
in these references.
As a lobbyist, I could not be a Republican lobbyist or a Democrat lobbyist.
No.
I was a lobbyist. And I grew up with Joe Missouri. He just lived 6 houses down the street from me.
Interesting.
And
I lived a block from Joe.
on Kaiser?
No, when he was living on Lawrence,
Oh, okay.
and I lived on Clark.
Oh, okay.
Small world, huh?
Yeah. I've actually sat down. It was famous for Mark Roscoe and Joe Missouri to have dinner together. I've actually had dinner with the two of them, sitting there talking.
Couple good guys.
Yeah, it's tragic what happened to Joe. Last time I saw Joe, he didn't recognize me, and I didn't recognize him either. Disease took a terrible toll on him.
And it does.
Franklin, do you have any questions?
No, I guess that salary was the one thing and that Elaine brought out, and
You've already got 14,000 that is being spent on, proposed to be spent on human resources. You could roll that into this. I was going to ask, what is the highest paid county employee that's not a professional, such as a physician?
Andrea Driscoll.
Yeah, what does she make? I don't have her on my list.
Principal?
Superintendent. I think around 70.
Is it?
I think. I say that carefully.
She would be the highest.
So your chief administrative officer should be making similar to the highest paid county employee. But I'm offering myself at a lower pay than that.
You'd obviously have to withdraw from the race.
Yeah. Yes.
And for the primary, your name would still be on the ballot
Okay.
because you have time.
That was
Withdrawing.
one of my concerns. That's why not only am I wanting to get started at this, and I recognize the needs of my expertise in this county, but I had to deal with the race thing too.
Mm-hmm.
It's, in no way do I mean this as a threat to anybody on this commission, but if you don't hire me, I'm gonna fire my campaign up big time. And as you can see from my references, and who I've talked about, I've got some, what we lobbyists used to always call juice. The other thing too, as far as a lobbyist, I have never had to call a favor in. And I've got a lot of favors still out there. That's a political fact. Yesterday, I considered calling a favor in. Yesterday, I considered calling Jim Rice and Rick Hill, and having both make personal calls to the three of you to recommend me for this position. But I decided, no, I can do this on my own. There's a term in insurance and in law, it's Latin, it's res ispa loquitur, which means it speaks for itself. And I hope by me sitting here like this, it speaks for itself. I shouldn't have to call in any political favors because of my qualifications and expertise for this position. I'll save those political favors. I'll use that political favor when I call Mike Cooney and say, Mike, what programs do you have that can help the county I'm working for? I have direct access to Tim Fox's office. Through the Rick Hill campaign, those two campaigns were tied together. And we used pretty much the same offices. I know pretty much all of his personnel. Considering the matter here too of you hiring me again, it's an exempt position. It serves at the pleasure of the commissioners. So you don't have to go through the hiring process. The governor, as an elected official, gets to choose his managerial people. The governor, the Attorney General, Office of Public Instruction,
Secretary of State.
Secretary of State, they all are allowed to establish exempt positions that serve at their pleasure. If
Oh, you man.
If Rick Hill had become governor, I was in line for legislative liaison between the governor's office. I would have been the guy who, the legislative liaison. I worked with the leaders of the House and the Senate to promote the governor's legislation. From there, I was hoping to move on to fish, wildlife, and parks. That's my major love. I love bow hunting, I love fishing. We've got an out-of-state absentee landowner in our neighborhood up there on Polk Creek area that for years has not let anybody hunt elk on his property except for himself. We're inundated with elk. I've got to the point where I can name them. I can pick out the big bulls. But come hunting season, I've seen, in 4 years living up there, I've seen one cow elk come out of that section of 380. I've ridden my ATV up the road and had as many as 160 elk running along beside me. So, I'm digressing in some ways. Any other questions?
Not for me.
I think what I was gonna say is, we're creating a new position. I don't know. You know a lot more about this than I do. Even though we call it exempt, but I think it still have to, I don't know what.
No, because now I can tell you from experience, I was exempt at Secretary of State's office, first hired by Bob Brown, and did not have to advertise or anything. And then when Brad Johnson came in, he'd asked me to stay in that position, and no, it was not open to the public, so to speak. That was at his pleasure. By the same token, if I'd screwed up, I was just out the door.
And Franklin, that's why, if that question ever comes up again, we, through other elected officials, we're just following what they're doing. And that's why in this position description, I specifically put, this is an exempt position. It defines the position. The Chief Administrative Officer will serve at the pleasure of the Broadwater Board of County Commissioners. that's some legalese in there that would free you commissioners of any responsibility if you were to hire me and somebody came in and said, well, why didn't you put that out to the public? It's right here in the position description. Also in the position description, hiring preference will be given to applicants residing in Broadwater County. That frees you up of that too. Somebody from Lewis and Clark County comes in and says, well, why didn't you open it up? I'm just as skilled as Roger is. You can say back to him, yeah, but you don't live in this county, and we wanted somebody who has some skin in the game.
What about space? Where would you put it?
Honestly, I've got the biggest office in this county and I'm the only one there. I'm happy to share, there's 4 desks.
Sorry.
One of them is being used to stain wood, it's Franklin's. You know, I don't see an issue with space.
That would be a perfect fit because I directly answer to you 3. So I might as well work right in the office where you 3 have space available.
I have one question, I don't know if this is appropriate. I'd like to ask Bill, being he's the only one in here, what is your reaction to this?
Well, I like it. I've always kind of advocated for, I call it a city-county manager, but a manager, so that's been my preference.
Thank you.
I will add this to the discussion. When Jim Nyes said that he was officially not interested, I sent a panicked email to Mike Seistedt and Harold Blatty and said, eek, what do you suggest? And kind of laid out what the facts are. Just a couple of sentences of the response from Mike Seistedt. He's chief legal counsel at MACO. And he said, the commission have the authority to hire assistants under 7-5-2107, which provides, quote, the Board of County Commissioners may employ such persons as it deems necessary to assist the board in the performance of its duties. Each board may adopt a resolution defining the qualifications, duties, salary, and responsibility of such persons. Such persons may be paid monthly, twice monthly, or every 2 weeks. I didn't bring my law book, that's just the paragraph he provided, so we can follow those other state agencies. I do need to put this out there, because we are opponents, I do feel that I need to recuse myself from this vote. So, you know, I do still feel that bringing any information like this forward is within my responsibility, but as far as the vote goes, that will be, I will recuse myself.
I think that's wise.
So-
Otherwise, somebody's gonna say, well, if she voted to put him in there, then it's one of us opponent,
Right, right,
you know?
yeah.
But
I will say this for the record, I would actually love a race with Roger and I going to the general. And the reason for that is I think it'd be healthy for this county to have 2 extremely well-qualified persons for this job. I think that would send a very positive message to the rest of Montana, as well as to the citizens of this county. So I guess I'm recusing myself on both sides. It could be too that I vote against it because I want Roger as my opponent too. So,
Then you don't get to vote, yeah.
exactly,
It's
yeah.
pure and simple. Where we with HR then?
Where are we with it?
Mhm.
Well,
If Roger gets this job.
I
I'm not gonna call it a job, I'm gonna call it a position,
right,
because of it being exempt.
and I think you addressed HR and some of the issues that you've seen, which are 100% right on. And I would see you as HR in this position, and I think you addressed that.
And we can easily write this into this position. Again, the position description is constantly evolving thing, is jobs constantly evolve.
Now, with the information from Jim Nyes, I did ask Debbie to print off for me a couple of job descriptions for human resources, HR.
Okay.
So, you know, that we can certainly marry some pieces of that into the discussion. Here they are. And they just come off of the NACO website. One is director and the other is specialist. And I got those right before the meeting, so I haven't looked at them yet. One of the things that Debbie found a couple of weeks ago when looking at HR specialists is the salary. Median salary was $85,000. She was at $15. Yeah.
I spoke to Darn it.
Yeah. When Nancy Everson was here, getting Debbie kind of started on some of the preliminary steps of the budget, she's the finance officer for Lewis and Clark County. She had asked how much Debbie was making, and I said $15 an hour. And she said, what's her job again? And of course I said she's payroll, HR, and going to be doing the budget and audit. And Nancy was very animated in how low we were paying Debbie, and specifically for the HR job that she was doing. Debbie then pulled it up, it's $85,000 a year median. It's very specialized service, so those are some of the things that we need to look at.
It's very time consuming.
It is, and it's very serious.
Yes, it is.
HR keeps counties out of court. Going to court costs a lot of money. You do things right the first time, you save your citizens.
When you mentioned the MCA, the section of the MCA, I have actually written legislation and handed it over to legislative services to fine tune and put in their format before it goes to a committee and found a sponsor for legislation. I know my way backward and forward in the MCA. You have my commitment that major priority from the day one I walk into this office is re-educating myself, bringing myself up to date on HR rules. They change every time a court case happens. They're primarily written off of case law. I'm very familiar with researching case law too.
Can I make a comment? I see your operations as I've watched the commission, and you make a lot of day-to-day decisions and help these. A manager could make all those decisions for you. I think it would speed up your commission meetings. That's why you hire a manager. And if you make some wrong decisions, you talk to that manager. So I've seen you make a lot of decisions that could be passed on to this type of position.
I think that's true.
Here's what I would ask. A resolution and a vote today, and then a final resolution and a final vote on it. I can be here at 7:30 Monday morning to start filling out the paperwork. We can get going on the HR situation.
Yeah, we got a lot to digest here first. I mean, I don't think we should jump this fast. I mean, we're talking about this job description that isn't even out yet for the HR.
I don't know if I agree with you, Franklin. I understand where you're coming from, but I mean, we've been talking about HR for forever and a day, so to speak. And it's my understanding Debbie will have that ready here this week, is that correct?
I'd be surprised if it's not ready today.
Okay. And by hiring Roger, that takes the pressure off of our back so we can get on with some other stuff.
Frankly, I don't mean to be tenacious on this, but especially when I was working with federal government and my legislative activities, I saw things talked and talked and talked while action needed to take place. And it's one reason I like form of government with 3 commissioners. when I was an honors student at the University of Montana, and because I was an honors student under scholarship, I had to write a senior paper. My senior paper was on risk shift management. And I could have written a 20-page paper in 2 sentences. And that is, the larger the group of people making a decision,